All righty. It looks like we are officially live today on the T Podcast. We got a great episode. We're talking with Ashley Mudd. For those that have been living in Lafayette for any length of time, you probably know who Ashley Mudd is. She's been in several different roles in leadership. In fact, that's what we're going to be talking about. She is a leadership coach and facilitator. So we're going to be talking about all that. Real quick, our studio sponsor is Optimize Generator People. Their website is optimizegp.com. So if you need a whole home generator for your house, these are the people to call. They specialize in whole home Generac generator solutions. So if you want to keep your house powered during like a storm or just whenever the power decides to go out, or when Slimco or whoever decides to do rolling blackouts during the winter, they do that. And sometimes your power can be out for like 15 minutes. If you want your power back on, a whole home generator can help you out. So you can get started with them for like low as like $600 to start. And like, I want to say if you finance it, it's like about $100 and something a month, give or take. I don't know. I'm pretty sure that depends on what you're approved for, but check them out, optimizegp.com. We really appreciate their support, and y'all enjoyed the episode. All right, and you probably have heard me talk about this sponsor all the time, Chase Group Construction. They are a great local sponsor. They've been sponsoring us for a good minute. They build stuff. They're a construction company. They build new. They renovate. They love to build restaurants. They build a lot of restaurants. They're building a restaurant in Youngsville right now. It's a pickleball restaurant. So it's like pickleball courses and restaurants. So think like Top Golf for pickleball. So they're building a new Fat Pat's. It's a new version of Fat Pat's in Lafayette. They built the Fat Pat's in Broussard and all that. So basically, they like to build stuff. And you can check them out at chasegroupconstruction.com. Great local company, and they support local, and we really appreciate them. All right. And with that, let's get on with the episode. So, Ashley, welcome to the T Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about you. Are you originally from the Lafayette area?
Sort of. It's a long answer. So my mom is from the Burbridge area. My dad is from unincorporated St. Martin Parish. And so that's where a lot of my family is. And when I was in high school, my dad remarried. We moved to Abbeville. I graduated from Abbeville High. I did a brief stint in Baton Rouge. I was there for 1 year. It was not a good fit. I transferred to UL, and I've lived in Lafayette full time since I started college at UL. I didn't expect to graduate and stay, but well over 10 years later, I am still here. There's something special about Lafayette.
I hear that a lot, obviously. I'm pretty sure you've heard that almost ad nauseum, just, what is so special about Lafayette? It's like, we know it's special, but like, why? Why do you think it's so special?
Well, before we even started, we were talking about food. Like, yeah. I would be remiss not to talk about the food. I think that is really special. We travel a lot, and I can tell you the food is not the same elsewhere. I also think there's a sense of community here. Like, the image that's coming to mind right now is after the 2016 floods. I had a friend's son took his kayak out off of Pinhook. There was that hotel behind Outback, and was like getting people like in and out, sort of like paddling his boat himself, getting people in the boat and bringing them back to Pinhook. And like, where else does that happen? Where you don't know people, but you see that they're in need and you jump in and help. That has been my experience, having been through several hurricanes as a kid, as an adult, the storms we have here. I just think that like we show up for people, and there's something that's really special about that. That I sort of, obviously we have the risk of that, living here. Right. But I always feel like my neighbors would jump in and help me in whatever way they could. Actually, in fact, we had that snowstorm in January. right. Oh, like, yeah. Crazy major snowstorm. Stuff. I think 11 inches. our across the street neighbor, she is originally from Canada. She moved here decades ago, and our driveway is shaded, and so everyone else's driveways were defrosting, and ours wasn't. We had to go out and shovel the snow. Not something I ever knew.
You don't have a snow shovel?
No, I don't. And she saw us, and I think probably laughed before she came over to help and was like, hey, can I help you? I never imagined growing up in Canada would prepare me for this. But we had not met her. We've only been in our house a couple years, and she came and helped us like shovel snow in our driveway. And I think that's just like an example of people here just sort of don't have to know you, and they're willing to jump in and help you.
Yeah. I that's what I love about the area too. I'm not originally from here. I know, and this is not, I'm not trying to constantly tell people that listen where I'm from, but I'm only from an hour north, but it's just far enough where, you know, that whole saying of like, where does North Louisiana start? And I feel like I lived on that line.
Above I-10.
Oh, look, I live in Karen Crow at the moment, and I tell people, look, like there's a median somewhere. And of course, the above I-10 reference is funny. It's a joke. I know.
I say it to be provocative.
Yeah, I know. Like, I don't know if you know who DJ Rhett is on social media, but he's a comedian from the Thibodeau area, and he will ream people, not in a, more of in a joking way, about being from north of I-10 and all that. Like, it's a big joke. I get it. You know, north of I-10 doesn't cook Cajun, which a majority of the Cajun food influence, in fact, of the area is from north of I-10. When you think about Richard's, Savoy's, Carrie's Roux, Jack Miller's barbecue sauce, all of that stuff that you love on food at the festivals is from north of I-10. It's funny. But I lived in Turkey Creek.
Okay.
You know where Ville Platte is?
Yes.
So about 15 miles north of Ville Platte, there's a space somewhere between Ville Platte and Turkey Creek where the dialect and accent changes, and you don't know how or why, but it goes from more Frenchy Cajun to twangy redneck, and it's like, why? What is this weird little space in this state that has this line? And it's bizarre. Like, my brother sounds like Boomhauer off of King of the Hill, if you know that character.
Yeah.
And I say that to joke, but it is true, because sometimes I'm like, Brennan, what did you say? Oh, yeah, no. I'm like, okay, that's what you said. Anyway, it's just funny. But I say that to say that I moved to Lafayette in 2010 and knew something was different here. I lived in Lake Charles for a short time whenever I finally moved out of mom's house. I was like 19 years old, and I was like, I need to go. And I had a girlfriend at the time that was from the Lake Charles area, and I was like, I guess I'll go to Lake Charles. That's where her family was. I was like, let's figure that out. And I was trying to go to school for graphic design. And whenever I lived in Lake Charles, I had a couple of friends there, but like, it didn't feel like a community. Like, I know it is a community, and I'm pretty sure there's pockets where you feel like that's a community there that'll help everybody. We're South Louisiana still, but something about being in the Lafayette region, Acadiana, and people say Acadiana is like 9 parishes, even though by state it's like Calcasieu all the way to one of the New Orleans parishes nearby. But like, hovering in that middle zone of the Lafayette area, there's this weird like feeling that we breathe all at the same time. Like, there's this like collective feeling that we all live the same kind of day. Like, people in Scott, Broussard, Youngsville, even Crowley and Breaux Bridge all have that same kind of like feeling, like we're doing this together, but we're still living separate lives. But like, if somebody's hurt or if somebody needs help, a large amount of the community knows about it. It's just the weirdest thing.
It's interesting too, like hearing you talk about all those different places reminds me that, so you said you moved here in 10. I moved to Lafayette in 2009 to go to UL. And prior to that, like Lafayette was the big city. And I think too, when you're saying sort of we all breathe at the same time, have that same experience, I do think there's this sort of shared, like, you know, Lafayette's going to town. And so it's interesting because there's all these smaller areas around Lafayette that could really be an hour apart from each other, but have so much similarities to sort of how they've developed and sort of what the culture there is like. And so, yeah, I would agree.
Yeah. I mean, Lafayette would not be Lafayette without the neighboring cities, because those cities contribute to what Cajun culture is, whether it be Church Point, Breaux Bridge, Crowley, Rain. We just have this. I would dare even say New Iberia, but New Iberia is a whole nother animal by itself. Okay, so getting that out of the way, obviously you going to school in UL, you didn't think graduating that you would stay in Lafayette. Mm-hmm. Where did you think that you would have ended up?
My senior year at UL, it's sort of like, it's easy to look back retroactively and sort of tell the story, but I really think I was on a fork in the road where one was grad school. I was looking at going to Rutgers, which is in the Northeast, and I do not do well in the snow, and so it's kind of surprising me. Like, I really thought that was a good idea, or immediately getting a job. And I sat down with my academic advisor, who was very honest with me in a way that like I really needed at that age. And she was like, I don't think you should go to grad school. She's like, I think that you're just trying to delay like getting out into the world. You don't really seem passionate about one thing. I think you're just avoiding getting a job. She was right.
That's so funny.
And so I went to, I don't know if this still happens, but UL used to have these large career fairs at the Cajun Dome Convention Center. And I went and I met two of the reps representing the Girl Scout Council, which represents the state of Louisiana, everything on this side of the Mississippi River. And we totally hit it off. And I went through job interview, landed the job while in college, and started working there. I think I went to class like maybe Tuesday, Thursday, and then I worked Monday, Wednesday, Friday, whatever the days were. And once I started working, I was like, oh, there's this whole other world in Lafayette that I don't know. Like, I had spent 4 years at UL thinking that was Lafayette, and I had this incredible experience, and I was like, oh, but I need more. Well, then I graduated and got this job, and I was like, oh, there's so much more that I haven't even discovered. This is gonna sound silly, but I never really went south of the movie theater, and my office was on Cully Saloon, and just even the commute showed me so many different things of work, like different grocery stores, different parts of Lafayette. I had a large territory. The best way to say it is I did sales. And so I had a large territory across Lafayette Parish and the surrounding regions. So I was constantly exploring new things. Like, I would spend a day at Ernest Collette or Broussard Middle, and I was like, Lafayette's so much more than what I knew. And so it's like you kept unraveling that thread, and I was like, oh, there's always going to be more to learn here. Maybe this is a cool place to keep figuring out instead of leaving. And so here we are.
Maybe that's what it is. Maybe we're like a true onion. We love to cook with onions. Maybe we are an onion in that sense, that some people that graduate think, and they have it in their mind that they're set to leave town because they want to leave the small place. They want to go to a bigger city, and that's fine. And a lot of people do. It's funny. A lot of those same people come back. That's why we have the term boomerang.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of boomerangs here. There's a whole subculture of boomerangs here. And so maybe it's just, we need to encourage people to really peel back the layers of Lafayette.
Yeah.
Because there's some different layers that even I'm learning. And I'm like, I didn't realize that we had such a strong, like, technology-minded community here. We do. We have a larger medical community here. That's evident with the hospitals that we have. But, like, there's so many different sectors of types of industry. Or we could do better with industry. We could have better jobs. I get that. But there's a lot here that you can learn about, and obviously food too. But
and I think the art community industry here is incredible.
Oh, yeah.
I met a classmate in grad school who had come to Lafayette for Festival International, and that's what she knew about Louisiana. And it was one of those moments when it was like, other people travel to get something that's in our backyard. Like, you don't sometimes understand the magnitude of it when you're in it all the time.
I know the Festival International thing too. That is a big deal. Like, the fact that we have something like that that's still around, since 1986, 1985, something like that. It's wild to think about. And we have that much of a cultural significance here that we can host something like that and bring that type of people. I mean, it's really nice. We could talk about culture all day long. So mentioning college, I know your bio had it, but what did you go to college for?
So I think I had 7 majors, and by the time I graduated, I was like only a few credits short of having enough for 2 degrees. I ultimately graduated in sociology, an incredible department at UL, and it let me see sort of the interconnection of a lot of things. I love people, I love systems, and I love learning how people work together.
Yeah.
So that was my major of study. And then while I was at UL, I also, as I understand it, am the first student to ever create an academic minor. That when I was there, I ended up creating a minor in leadership studies. I had done, so when I was at in Baton Rouge, I was there for a year at LSU, and I was in a pretty incredible leadership program. It was really intimate. I learned a lot about Louisiana, and I think it really gave me more of an appreciation for the resiliency of this state. I mean, truly the magnitude of what the people in the state have gone through, what's happening in our coast. And when I was at UL, I realized that there wasn't something similar, and I really wanted to find leadership development opportunities to connect students to the community at large. And so I think my last 2 years there, spent a lot of time lobbying faculty and staff and this really crazy vision to launch a new minor at UL.
So you were one of the only students to launch an
academic minor.
Wow.
Yeah, because typically it would come out of,
Yeah.
It would be driven by an academic process, right? And so it's not typically a student saying, hey, I see this gap. Can I annoy all of you until I convince you that there's this gap here as well so that we can create this?
How much annoying did you have to do to get this to happen? Because, like, how did you go about doing that?
I truly credit so much of my experience and sort of where I am now to my time at UL. I had really good mentors that... Are you ever doing something and you don't realize that, oh, this might be odd or different? You're just assuming everyone else is. I didn't realize how special that experience was at UL. But Pat Cottenham and Dana Beckers were 2 staff members that just really took me under their wing. And as I came up with ideas, they would say, well, go see what's in the way. What's stopping you? The first big thing that I did on campus, I had brought in a donor drive for bone marrow donors. And I realized, like, oh, I think that I have the skill at organizing people and processes. Like, I think I'm good at this. And then started looking at the minors that we had and compared it to other programs in the state. Really then started looking in the UL system because I learned that sort of comparing UL to LSU. Yep, you know that. So I can already imagine, like I just said this on air. Anyway, I started comparing it to other programs in the UL system to see what was offered and realized there was a lot to be desired in that space. I spent some time not only talking with the academic folks, but also, I guess you would say industry, like people in Lafayette who hired. What are some of the skills that you think are lacking when you're hiring people straight out of undergrad? And some of it was what I feel like basic now, but just communication skills, being able to call people, being able to like sit through uncomfortable conflict and continue on and not give up. And so I went through UL's course catalog to see what courses could align with some of those needs. And I don't know if I had the language then, but I understood that I needed to appeal to different values. So I needed to explain, why would this matter for someone in employment? Why would this matter from someone from the academic lens? Why would it matter from a student? Like, why would they want to pay tuition money for this minor if they were in there? So I talked to a lot of different people, ultimately to understand what was the story that I needed to tell each of them to get them on board. It's a process to get new academic programs approved and for faculty members to agree to have their courses listed on it. And so something I'm proud of now in hindsight is that process wasn't complete when I graduated, and I kept working on it because I felt like I had done so much work to get it to that point. I didn't want it to stop. And so I kept meeting with the College of Liberal Arts Dean at the time, Dr. Kelman, the provost, until we were able to really push it over the finish line. And my brother is one of the first people who actually graduated with the minor. And so like that feels to me like legacy building, right? Like you're able to build this thing, and then your sibling came through and was able to take those courses.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. Sorry, excuse me. Oh my gosh. My throat has been itchy this whole week. This weather change has been wild.
It's that season.
Yeah. My sinuses have been kicking up, but I've been managing it. I'm on the tail end. I do got to get my last sponsor in, and then we'll kind of dive deeper into what you do, which you already started kind of doing that. So like, let's get this in before I lose track. All right. So our last sponsor of the episode is Music Academy of Acadiana. Their website is musicacademyacadiana.com. Just take out the of their company name. So it's Music Academy of Acadiana. Just take out the of, and that's the website. Great local music school. If you want to learn music, you can be a child, you can be an adult, you can suck, or you can be great at music. You can learn something new there. They teach every instrument, just about, wind, string, things you can beat on, drums, that is. And really great school, founded locally by Tim Benson, who is a music school graduate from UL Lafayette. If I don't say UL Lafayette, they will come at me because, naming. But yeah, great school, great sponsor. They've been sponsoring the podcast probably close to 6 years now, which is wild. And I started in 2018, and so they've been on it almost this entire time. So really appreciate them. Check out them, and they have about 500 students in and out each month. They have an award-winning in-house recording studio, so you can learn music and record an album there. Not many places, in town that you can do that with. So check them out, musicacademyacadiana.com. All right, so to kind of dive a little bit deeper into what you do. So your major, if I understand it correctly, was sociology, which kind of goes in line with leadership. I mean, that's kind of knowing how people think and work together, like you said. And leadership is knowing that and having that keen eye. So what made you want to go into sociology to begin with?
I am really fascinated by how people function, and I thought that psychology would have been the right fit, and I realized that it was more about your solitary mind and sort of like your experience, and that didn't quite fit for me. I took a lot of courses at UL, communication courses, a lot of social science courses, anthropology, statistics, and sociology is the one that felt like the best fit, that sort of pulled everything in together. I think sociology touches everything. I mean, I took early child development classes, I took gerontology classes, sociology of deviance, sociology of gender. It was so fascinating to see how all the things fit together. And instead of looking at like one person, it was how do all these people function as a collective? And I think that's what brought me ultimately into leadership development, because I see leadership as a way of organizing people. And that's so much of what you learn about in sociology. And so I felt like it is just such a natural marriage between the two. Okay.
So I'm fascinated with leadership. I don't have any training in leadership. I think like entrepreneurs, I feel like, and you may have something to say about entrepreneurs in itself, but I feel like entrepreneurs are people that crave that leadership role, whether that be for themselves or for a small group of people. Usually entrepreneurs, they have a small business and they're leading people. But I've always been entrepreneurial minded ever since middle school, and the leadership side of it was interesting to me because that kind of felt like it traveled in the same lane. I remember in middle school to high school, after seeing the word entrepreneur and learning what that was about, I said to myself, that might be what I am. I was like not even in, maybe 8th or 9th grade. I'm like, maybe that's what I am. I feel like I like to be independent. I feel like I like to do things on my own. Like all these things are resonating that I was learning. And then I learned that there was something called FBLA, Future Business Leaders of America. And I'm like, maybe I can join that club. I joined the club for a little while. And for whatever reason, I fell out of it. Like I don't know if I was getting what, maybe you get what you put in. And I don't think I put in a whole lot. They were giving me this task of like, it was like a computer software game where you build a company on the computer and like manage it. And I think I started doing that and I just lost interest in it. I don't know why. I don't know if I am to the point. So I've never been diagnosed with ADHD or ADD, but I think I was given medication for that at one point. I don't know. I don't know how medicine works sometimes, but I just think my interest like kept shifting. And that was obviously a very small window of my life, but yeah. So in your experience, leadership and entrepreneurship, like how do those things coexist? And cause I feel like that's what I view leadership as, is an entrepreneur type person.
I think it's yes, and I think the more that, 2 years in of having my own business and spending a lot of time with entrepreneurs, I'm learning that there's a level of risk that you have to be comfortable with in doing to be an entrepreneur. You said the word independent, and I think that's a piece of it. I think there are a lot of folks that believe they'll become an entrepreneur, they'll launch their own thing just so they can have their independence, almost like stick it to the man. And I think that's such a small piece of what it ends up being, that it's about your level and tolerance for risk, about if you put your money in this, it's not guaranteed that it's gonna pay back. You can spend 80 hours a week on this idea that you love, but it does not mean that other people love it back and they want to pay for it. I think the parallel of that into leadership is also risky. And we don't acknowledge it in the same way. Do you know, people say, yeah, being an entrepreneur, being a small business owner, being responsible not just for your livelihood, but the livelihood of other people has all this inherent risk. And then we sometimes forget that being in any sort of leadership role has that same level of risk. And I think we sometimes don't maybe hold people in roles of authority to the level of standard that we could be holding them to, and understanding that the decisions you do or don't make, the ones you're kicking down the road, are still impacting people's lives. That you have to find a way to be attuned enough to the people around you to understand the reality of what's happening, and not just maybe the one that you've constructed.
Okay. So if the parts that I got out of that is obviously independence is a small part of it, but with leadership, you are essentially working with other people. Naturally, leadership, because if without other people, there's no leadership.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no structure there. But you mentioned entrepreneurs put money into something and don't necessarily get that back every single time. Like, it's a risk. Like, you put something in and you may not get it back. The same thing, I guess, could, like you kind of alluded to, is leadership. You invest in people, you put your trust in people, and you expect them to, almost lead as well. Like, you're a leader and you want people to lead by example and all that good stuff with you. And you may invest a lot of time in someone and not get what you expect out of it. I kind of want to like break that down a little bit, because like what ultimately is you're a leadership coach. Like, what are you ultimately trying to instill into people? And I feel like you might have something to say according to that, like breaking that down a little bit.
Yeah. I think leadership only ever works if you're able to mobilize people around you. We could argue whether we're mobilizing those people in the right direction. I think that's a whole other conversation.
Right.
But it is about sort of investing people and bringing them alongside you so that you're able to sort of share and do that work. something that came to mind when you were saying that is the idea of, an entrepreneur invests their money in a project, maybe it works or it doesn't. If you invest in people, maybe it works or it doesn't. And in the work that I do, there's this sort of cliche, what happens if I invested in my people and they leave? Well, what happens if I don't and they stay? And this idea that sometimes we're hesitant to invest the time, the energy, the money, and the development of people on our teams. And I have my, pie in the sky vision is that, well, if we all start doing it, well, then we're elevating the playing field, right? And so not only am I benefiting, but you're benefiting. And when we're eating at a restaurant, we're benefiting because we're sort of investing in society. And that, I think, is what's shifted for me in my journey of leadership development, especially having spent so much of my career in civic leadership, is that the benefit and the ROI of that is beyond just the unit that's investing in that leadership. And so I'm trying to think, I'm going to say Acme Company. I don't want to pick any one company. Let's just say Acme Company. Let's pretend it's based in Lafayette and it has, 100 employees. The way that they invest in those employees impacts more than just Acme. It's going to impact Lafayette. It's going to impact how those folks move through this community, how civically engaged they are. It's going to impact how they're able to support their kids and if they're involved in the PTA or not. That sort of, I see all these ripple effects. And so I have this theory, this belief that as we develop leaders, it should be focused on everyone that's wanting that type of development instead of just, you're in this management position now at Acme and we are going to invest in your leadership. Well, if they're already in a management role, they've gotten a lot of leadership development along the way. But who's your frontline staff that's out doing all of your work, that's out driving your trucks across Lafayette, or who is sitting at your receptionist desk greeting every person that comes in? What's the leadership development for everyone on the team that can really transform how that company functions internally? And then all those people go out into the different ways that they engage. And the reality is, if this pretend company is in Lafayette, they're not just living here. They're living in Vermilion Parish and St. Martin Parish. How are they going back into those places and lifting up their schools and their communities? That I firmly believe in that ripple effect and why leadership development is like an exponential gain. It's not just the money you put in. There's so much more that comes out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned that cliche saying earlier with if you invest in your employees and they leave versus if you don't and they stay. I know I paraphrased there, but I think that's fascinating because I thought about that. I saw that statement once and I was like, that is kind of like almost like a little, not a catch-22, but you want to be a great company. You want to make your people and give your people the tools that they need, but what if they leave? And it's kind of do you feel that, because you mentioned resilience earlier, and I feel like Lafayette, along with South Louisiana, but Lafayette in particular has a lot of examples of resilience here, being able to do things and take care of ourselves and our community. Mm-hmm. Do you feel that people here that are leadership minded, maybe they don't realize that they're leaders, but let's say they do something cool, they create something or they do something for Lafayette that would benefit Lafayette, but maybe they get in their own way and they don't lead the right way. Do you feel like we have more of that mentality here, or do you feel like we have great leaders here? Like, what do you think is Lafayette's leadership personality as a whole?
To answer that, I think the first thing I would have to say is I think leadership and authority are two different things.
Oh, definitely.
And I think Lafayette has absolutely incredible leaders. I think we don't always have the right folks in positions of authority. And I think that distinction really matters because regardless of what your hierarchy or your title is, your ability to practice leadership, to mobilize people, to stay in it when conflict rises, to figure out how to manage yourself so that you don't get so triggered you have to walk away, that can be practiced no matter what your title is, whether you're managing a household, you're managing a classroom, you're managing a company of 100 employees. And I've seen it. I worked at the Leadership Institute for 5 years. The amount of people that came through that program, like Lafayette has some incredible collective genius in leadership. And I think sometimes we have folks in positions of authority, and I mean that from not just civic, but business and sort of all types of ways that really lead from this place of command and control. And I feel qualified to say that because for much of the beginning of my career, I also led from this place of command and control that I've been put into this position of authority for some reason. People must believe in me. And so my idea is the right way. I just need to get all of you to follow my way. Like, I know people will resonate with that either we've been that person or we've reported to someone like that and we didn't like it. I think what happens is that when you end up in this position of authority, everyone before you in that took all the responsibility. So you feel like I have to take all the responsibility. I have to start leaning into control so that everyone does it my way so that it goes the right way, as opposed to I'm now in this position of authority. Who should I surround myself with that will challenge me, that will be candid with me about what's going well and what's not, that will develop, that will see spots I would have never seen on my own and sort of bring everyone along in that process. I think that's something that is where Lafayette can have the most growth. And I think that requires a shift on both people in authority and not. Part of it is people in authority sharing some of that work. I also think it's for the people who aren't in authority acknowledging there's no one coming to save us. I've been in this city long enough to be through several mayor elections. I worked at the Leadership Institute for so long that I worked with several different mayors. And I think there's always this idea that if we just get the one right person, they're going to come in and fix it. And it's impossible. And a lot of times we'll look to that role to be the final voice of everything. And I don't know about you, but there is no one person I've ever met on this planet that agrees with me on everything. So if I'm waiting for that one right person, I'm always going to be disappointed. And so when I see people who are taking things into their own hands, people who have started doing food pantries in their neighborhood, so they'll pop up a lean-to and they'll have dry goods and a fridge that they're powering in their neighborhood so folks can have access to food. I think of guys like Butch, who started 24-Hour Citizen Project, who I couldn't even tell you the amount of money now that's been invested back into the community. You had my friend Ryan on that did the musical instrument library. These are all people that were not in positions of authority and still went and saw a gap in Lafayette and came up with a solution, not the solution, and then rallied people around it. So I think we have all of those leaders. I think that sometimes we need to remember we can't wait for folks in authority to save us, that when we see the gap, we can be empowered to go and plug that gap.
I love that. And I think that's where the resilience part of this area comes through, is because we have such ingenuity here in pockets that don't necessarily get the opportunity to be in an authoritative position. But if they take the authority on their own in their community and actually be a leader, and so a great example, and you mentioned food pantry and food fridges, the Foodies of Lafayette Facebook group. I don't know if you're familiar with that group.
No, I'm not on Facebook.
Okay. So I think that's fair, because I did try to find you on Facebook and you were not there, but you were on Instagram heavily.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So
I feel so called out because that's very accurate.
But so what's interesting is, so my biggest following is on Facebook. Facebook as a platform in South Louisiana is the most dominant. Mm-hmm. If you want to see what your momo's doing, if you want to see what the person that bullied you in high school is doing, they're there. Usually not always in the best light. Typically, that's how it is. But there's groups there. And I think a lot of people that stay on Facebook like the groups primarily for that, just because of the group setting, and hopefully because of developing Lafayette. Hopefully, but there's a Facebook group called Foodies of Lafayette. They have over 100,000 members in that group. It's a big group.
That's big.
And they have been really taking the lead in providing. I don't know if it's providing is the right word. They have initiated several food fridges in town, or have taken ownership of food fridges that were like kind of left to kind of almost deteriorate, and have joined forces with other locals to build better shelters around the fridges. And so the food pantries and food fridges that are out in the neighborhood, there's some of them that'll have the Foodies of Lafayette like emblem or ad sign painted on them. And during the government shutdown, which historic shutdown, by the way, what was it, 40 days or something like that?
Longest one, yeah.
A lot of people were struggling. I mean, SNAP benefits were cut off. Companies like Chicken Salad Chick were giving free meals to people. Like, I think company-wide, too. I don't even think it was just Lafayette. I think as a company, every child that came into that business for like the past month, or as long as the government was shut down, got a free meal. You didn't even have to buy anything. So that right there is also really cool. But like Foodies of Lafayette decided, we want to make sure to provide for people that are food insecure. And so I think even before the government shutdown even happened, they were already starting this food pantry, food fridge initiative. And if you ever do get back on Facebook, definitely join that group. They're doing some great stuff. They even have their own podcast, and they talk about the food fridge on one of their latest episodes. And it just to see locals that are not even remotely in politics or in a position of power per se, having that much ability to make change is really cool. It's really cool.
I love that example because I think that it shows that we all have that influence. Sometimes it just takes some creativity to figure out what's the area that we can influence. I don't know the history of that, but I imagine whoever created that group didn't expect 100,000 people, which that's a lot by any means. But if you consider the Lafayette population, to have a Lafayette food group and it's that many people, that's a huge level of influence. And they weren't elected into that position. Do you know what I mean? They weren't the CEO of a company that a lot of that is built. It makes me think, I have a neighbor, yesterday we had a brown grocery bag with a flyer put in front of our doorstep. She put one in front of every neighbor's house. She's collecting canned goods in our neighborhood park to deliver to Second Harvest. And she just did that. Like, she knew that there was a need. I think she made a calculated assumption that our neighborhood would be a neighborhood that was able to give. And so she picked a location, she picked a date, and then went and hand delivered grocery bags to everyone's house to make it, I just have to go out of my pantry, pull things, and deliver it. I think there are small opportunities like that always happening and that are available to us, no matter if we think we're in a leadership position or not.
Yeah, yeah. I think some people also are scared of leadership positions. They may feel like they need to do something and have maybe they have the ability to do something, but maybe they're scared of what them doing that will lead to. And I mean, so being a leadership coach, what do you say to people that feel like they could be a leader, or maybe they're scared of it? Like that lady who put brown paper bags on doorsteps. That's a leadership role. Like, she went out and did it.
Yep.
I'm assuming whoever. What do you say to that?
I like to be honest, and that like there is risk in leadership. I think that the way that risk looks is constantly changing as society evolves around us. I'm excited that she did that. I can't speak for every person in our neighborhood who might have seen that same bag and gotten frustrated and like grumpy about it. I do think that you take a risk. I think the way to assess if that risk is worth it is understanding what's your purpose and why you're doing that. If I'm honest with myself and I look back at different things that I've done, I've had a lot of professional success. I've had monetary success, and some of those things were aligned with my purpose and some of them weren't. And when those things weren't aligned with like my purpose and my goals is I think where I felt the most tension and the most fear of what the fallout could be in sort of taking that risk. And so I think it's figuring out what your purpose is and keeping that as your North Star, and then always assessing risk against that. I know that everyone's level of risk is going to be different. Something that I'm just now starting to wrestle with is that I can say and do things now that I couldn't have done 13 years ago when I started my career. Like I know that to be true. One, it's experience, it's social capital. As long as I've been in this community, the relationships I've met. Part of it is financial ability. I mean, fresh out of college, I think my salary was like equated to 13 an hour. You know, that just sort of like as you move through different parts of life, you can take different risk. I think if you have the ability to take more risks, absolutely do it. And then if not, figure out where are the small places to lean into your influence, even if it's in your family, even if it's how you respond to someone in your household asking again, what are we going to have for dinner tonight? And like, does that send you off the edge? Like sort of figuring out where in your life do you have influence and how do you push yourself just a little bit more than you did the day before, and then a little bit more the next day, and then a little bit more. And it compounds over time, that it feels less risky the more that you lean into it, whatever it is that's scaring you the most about practicing leadership.
Okay. So kind of continuing in that vein. So let's say, because Lafayette's not a huge community. It's a big community, but it's not a big city. It's a big community, not a big city. And so there's only a little amount of leadership opportunities on a bigger scale that you can have or take advantage of. Let's say you're someone who has just a little bit of a gumption to step into a leadership role, and you end up getting into a position where you have some influence and all that good stuff. And the more you move up into a leadership position, obviously the greater risk you have. Mm-hmm. Like there's not opportunity. Opportunity is the wrong word for this. There's possibilities that somebody in the community or multiple people in the community do not favor your leadership style or what you're doing with your leadership role. And if the community has any sort of power to remove you from that leadership position, whether that be voting you out or socially being canceled, or however there's another word or phrase that I was looking for, but basically being exiled or being pushed out of a position or even a community, like how do you avoid that? Like let's say you're moving up in leadership and someone who's come up out of nothing and to do leadership, like that risk of potentially having a community that doesn't vibe with you.
There's so many pieces of that, because I think from the elected official level is that my question would be sort of, what have you done that sort of folks are turning on you? Because at the end of the day, and we can have a whole episode for me to just talk about governance. I have so many opinions on governance, but the idea is that sort of you have to be of and for the people. And so I'd need to know a little bit more about that, why folks were turning on you. I think in a more general level, if you're in a leadership role and you're concerned about different factions of people, part of it is knowing who and what those factions are and what are the stories that they tell about you. Are they true or are they not? There's this quote I've recently learned, and I'm not going to get it right, but it's like, anything I've accepted about myself can't be used as a weapon against me. And I think that is so important in leadership, is that like self-management and knowing and understanding yourself is important, because then it helps you know the things that you need to work through, and it almost can't be used against you. And so understanding what are the things about you that mesh really well with folks? What is the thing about you that clash? I'll use a personal example. I love to ask questions. If you or anyone has ever done Strength Finders, like I have learner, I have input, I have individualization. And so I love asking questions, and I love seeing each person as like their own universe. And so I love to ask a lot of questions and understand what's going on in their world. In my head, what that looks like is, damn, I think you're so cool. I want to ask you all these questions to understand about you. I learned a few years ago that how other people receive that is, Ashley doesn't trust me. Why does she keep asking questions and she doubting me? Never my intent. I finally had a coworker who had the courage enough to tell me that that's how I was coming off, and that she thought I was going after her job because I was asking so many questions. And it really surprised me. I had no idea that people ever perceived me that way. And I started doing some work and asking my friends, do I ever come off this way? And one friend was like, sometimes, it is a bit overwhelming. I didn't know it. That like from my perspective, I just want to learn everything about you. And I think it's so cool to ask questions. But I do think on some level, I have a responsibility to understand how I'm still being perceived by people. And that now I'll say this, if I'm in a new environment, especially when I onboard new clients, I tell them, like one of my core values is curiosity. I'm going to ask you a lot of questions. I'm letting you know where my intent is. If it's uncomfortable, tell me. I'm open to change my style. I never would have gotten there if a peer hadn't used leadership and told me how I was coming off. And then now I understood the story that people is telling about me. I do want to caution that doesn't mean you can constantly control your perception. That is not true. I know you know that. With the amount of, I can't even imagine what your audience is now. Not everything we say is going to land with the intention that we have. Mm-hmm. But at least knowing and understanding how we're perceived helps us figure out, does this matter enough for me to change? I still ask a lot of questions. I love doing it. Now I just know how to preface it and maybe sometimes add some levity to tell people I'm about to do this. So now that they don't feel like it's an attack on them. The flip side of that, sometimes when people are asking questions of me, I'm not aware that maybe they're coming from a negative place because I think, oh, they're just curious and they want to know, these answers. It's one quirk I have, and we all have those types of things. Knowing them and how other people perceive them, I think really helps you as you move into leadership and positions of authority to know how you're going to be perceived by different groups of people.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm curious, based on what you know about me, which is very limited, I'm guessing only surface level, how do you perceive me? I'm curious now because, okay, I'm thinking about, like, if I'm trying to think about how I think I'm being perceived, I have my own thoughts, but I'm curious to know from your perspective. You're not on Facebook, so I don't know how long you've been off of Facebook.
Not that long.
Okay.
Less than a year.
Okay. So this year has been a really good year. We're almost at 100,000 followers.
Congrats.
On Facebook. We had almost 40,000 on Instagram last year. I got hacked partly because of my own stupidity. I clicked the link I shouldn't have. Total boomer move. But
never click the links.
I know, I did, but it was a link that I was expecting, at least in the flow of the scam, I guess. And I was expecting it. And I clicked it and I was like, oh God, I knew exactly what happened right away. I was like, skip. So we have about 8,000 on Instagram, and on TikTok, we're doing really good on TikTok. TikTok's 15,000. So overall, really decent amount, but I have my own way of doing things. And I'm curious to, like, knowing what you know thus far, like, how do you perceive me?
That's such a hard question.
I know. I'm sorry.
I just based on sort of like the time we spent together this morning, one of the things I picked on quickly is that you really want to do meaningful work. That like the type of work that you do matters to you, and to do that work in integrity. That sort of it feels aligned. And I'm gonna take a leap and tell me if I'm wrong. I also think being able to have autonomy over your own voice really matters to you. And I say that because that's something that I value, but I'm learning the more that I meet different types of people and work with different leaders is not a shared value. Some people love being, this is going to be very broad, but sort of like corporate spokesperson. Like they very much do very well representing something else. Whereas my perception of you is that you really want to show up with your voice in the way that you do things. And I think I picked up on that because I am similar. I sometimes struggle, and I have had difficulties in different roles before where I'm the face of the organization, and, Ashley has this opinion, but then there's the executive director and the face of this organization that can't really speak separate from that. Yes, am I right?
Yeah, look, you are pretty solid on that one. Growing up, I have always, and this comes from a very young-minded person that I was, but I still feel like that today. But with some leniency, I was always anti-authority. I'm like, I don't like people telling me what I can and cannot do. And that just comes from a middle schooler type mindset. I'm like, can't tell me what I can do. But I know now as an adult that there are cases where there are someone above you, an authority figure, that in order to keep your life safe in this particular moment, you may have to do and say things that you don't like. And sometimes usually your livelihood is dependent on it. And so you have to really bite the bullet. For me, I was like, I still want to hold on to the ability to say what I want to say. And I found that ability in developing Lafayette early on. Driving some sort of community page. I always wanted to have some sort of community page. Mm-hmm. Whenever I moved to Lafayette, I felt community here. I was like, I need to do something community-based, but I don't know what it is. So I tried a couple of different things, and developing Lafayette is what stuck. And that has helped me keep my independence and that voice-wise goes. But I had to have a 9-to-5. I worked at golfballs.com for 5.5 years. And for the most part, I was in a position where my voice was not heard outside of the company and to the customers, which is great. I did have interactions with customers, but very brief. There were moments, though, in the company where I challenged the leadership structure or some things that were in the leadership, the culture of the company. And some interesting things have happened. I will be very brief with this, but a lot of companies have core values, mm-hmm. Okay? And there was a particular core value that, look, I love GBC. I love golfballs.com. One of my favorite jobs. I will go back there if I ever have to. Hopefully I don't have to. But one of the core values was empowering people. And I thought, that is a great core value. I feel like my voice matters. Like that was my thought. And for the most part, in that company, yes, they do value empowering people. But here's something that happened, and I thought my voice or my position, I was empowered to do this. And apparently I was stepping out a little bit out of the chain of command. And my former supervisor, if you're listening, I'm sorry, I do have to talk about it. But it is what it is. He knows I still have this on my mind, but it's going to stick with me forever. So I was a graphic designer at golfballs.com, and I was doing some work, and we would get corporate logos all the time for big companies wanting to do golf tournaments. And this particular, I was working next to the salespeople, and I overheard a call. And these salespeople were kind of poking fun at this particular customer because they said, he has his YouTube channel, blah, 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 and he wants to see if he can maybe, get some golf balls, or maybe he might want a discount or something to that effect. And I overheard that. I'm like, what's the YouTube channel? Just kind of shooting out of the cubicle. And so they told me, so I went and looked, and he had over 1 million subscribers. I'm like, guys, this customer is ordering golf balls from us. He's big on YouTube. And so I looked up his YouTube channel, and I was kind of digging into what he does. And I found that he likes golf. I'm like, okay, this is good. But he's not a golf YouTuber. His YouTube channel is called What's Inside. And he's based out of Utah. Him and his sons created this YouTube channel to like literally cut stuff in half to open it up and see what's inside. Really cool stuff. And I was curious. So I said, you know what? I may be stepping out of line, but I'm going to reach out to this guy via YouTube or Twitter. I think it was Twitter. I reached out to him on Twitter and I said, hey, could we possibly work together? I'm the graphic designer working on your logo. I would love to see if we can work together. Maybe there's a trade that we can do. I said, I don't have the authority to initiate this trade or give you free stuff, but maybe I can talk to my higher ups and work something up. So I said, I want you to give me a proposal of what you need, because he was going to bring these golf balls that he was ordering with his logo on it to VidCon. And he was going to and I talked to him over the phone. He called me. I was like, really cool to talk to a YouTuber, by the way. I was like geeking out. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to VidCon, and like the golf balls that I'm ordering from you guys, we're going to be cutting them in half to show followers of ours what's inside. And it's like making sense. I'm like, this is promo gold. Like, why are we not like jumping on this? So I said, send me a proposal. I'm going to send it to my higher ups and see what we can do. We're going to make something happen. And when he told me he was going to make a video talking about VidCon with the golf balls in the shot, I was like, great. To cut the story short, I made the emails to the higher ups. Really didn't get a whole lot of feedback from it. And I said, well, I think this is something we should do. A couple of months go by. I get an email from the YouTuber. He's like, hey, here's the video that we did. And we never did a deal, by the way. Here's the video that we did. It's on YouTube. And it was him talking about going to VidCon and having the golf balls cut in half. And when I saw that video, my heart sank, because I was like, we missed it. And in the back corner of the video was, and I don't know if he did this on purpose. So if he did, good job sticking it to us, though, was our box with our shipping tape on it, with our logo on it, turned upside down. And I said, we missed it. Like, what happened? And so I sent that video to our CEO, and Tom Cox, great guy, super innovative guy. He responded. He's like, how do we get on that video? I'm like, dude, we missed it. We missed it. And then I got coached that I needed to follow a particular chain of command to have made that happen. But I went straight to marketing, bypassed my supervisor to try to make that happen. And it didn't happen. I'm still frustrated to this day that it didn't happen. But whatever.
You're gonna bring that with you forever.
It's going to the grave.
What year was this? I'm just trying to like place 1 million followers on YouTube. Like,
so this was, my last day at golfballs.com was December 31st, 2017. So this was about 2015, 2016.
Yeah.
That 1 million on YouTube at that time was
a
good.
lot.
Yes.
And I asked because I think there's so many things at play. Like, one, I think it's a different value set. I talk about values a lot, but at that time, if you were on YouTube and you understood, I imagine, and this is being streamed on YouTube right now, right? So 10 years ago, having a different understanding of what YouTube is maybe compared to the mainstream. I can see a world where a lot of folks in marketing and sales positions in 2015 weren't going to value that type of coverage, I guess, or visibility, because it didn't seem relevant in the same way that now, maybe if you made that same pitch, it would go different. I also think I heard you say chain of command, and that's something that when I work with organizational clients, we talk a lot about. I'm passionate because I once worked in a place where anytime we emailed someone out of our department, I had to CC both my supervisor and their supervisor. So if I'm emailing one person, there's now 4 of us on an email chain every time. And organizations, I find, who have very rigid hierarchy and chain of command, and I've even seen some policies where it outlines who you can talk to when, at some point, someone was burned and they created this process almost in a punitive way, like in response to something that happened, likely with people who weren't even on the team today. And they just keep working that like process. And it's creating all of this like organizational debt of how you have to maneuver and wade through to talk to people instead of just talking to people. And I think we lose sight of, wait, we're actually just a bunch of humans in this building. I could get up and walk over to Ben's office and talk to him, but that's not okay, right? And my advice for organizations sort of when they're in that space is sort of, what are you trying to solve for? But what are you accidentally creating as a consequence of this? Why is it so difficult to communicate? Who has decision-making authority? Also, understanding that I don't think jobs are as specialized and siloed as they were in the past. That sort of, you said you were a graphic designer. I think that there was a different economy and world where if you were a graphic designer, you were only the graphic designer, not in the values, but in the work product you did. You only did graphic design. And it was sort of stay in your lane, do this. But the reality is now, the accessibility to graphic design, a lot of people think they're graphic designers. That's another conversation. But you're doing so much more, and your understanding of YouTube is going to be different than someone else on the team. And it's like, well, if we create this environment where you show up with your whole self, well, now if we have this person who understands YouTube, how does our system listen to this perspective and incorporate it back into the system so that maybe we get ahead of this trend? Or I also think it's just as fair to say, we actually don't value coverage on YouTube, but let's just own it and say why. That sort of, there's ways to just be more human and talk to each other in that.
Yeah. And, I say that story, and there may be some parts that I glazed over or maybe omitted to shorten it. But ultimately, my supervisor, and they all realized that was something that they missed, and they recognized that. They realized that after I showed them the video that had been posted less than a day, had over 1 million views on it. They were like, oh, we missed it. This is something we could have done better at. And I think they recognized that. But it's also interesting that the core values after that changed. They were, for the most part, kept the same, but reduced to more of a digestible sense. Because the core value list was like, I want to say 15 items at that time. And then after this particular instance, it was like 5 or 6. And empowering people wasn't on there. Because I brought that up to the CEO. We had I brought it up directly to him. And I said, I felt empowered to do this. And it's weird to know that core value to me did not feel like anything. Am I empowered to email somebody beyond my supervisor? I don't know. I didn't feel like it. It's just weird. But so that all goes back to leadership and how you lead your company, how you lead the culture of the company, and ultimately how you lead yourself too. And then there could be something said, maybe I should have done the chain of command. I don't know. I didn't realize there was a chain of command because I thought there was an open door policy.
Yeah.
So maybe that was my thought was, and yeah, anyway.
Can
I digress.
Yeah. You just said open door policy, and it's like a pet peeve. So can I just briefly talk about that?
Absolutely.
I want to do some research on this, on when open door policies really became a part of our corporate language and everyone's saying it, and it's not real. And here's why. I do a lot of coaching with people who manage large teams, senior executives, and a lot of times they'll be frustrated at sort of someone knocks on their door, hey, I have a question, and then 15 minutes later they sort of derailed the day. And somewhere written down, we have this open door policy. And so for me, literally, that means your door's open and I can come to you at any time. And I don't know anyone who can do their best work and function if that is true. If the door's open and you can come in at any time. That it sounds nice to say we have an open door policy, it's one of our values, but I really encourage organizations to get more honest with what are you trying to convey, and let's make this more tangible. Maybe you have office hours, a few times a week, and that is your open door policy. And anyone anyone should be able to access you during that time. Maybe you really need a more candid environment and your meetings should be different. It has nothing to do with like when people can come to your office, because if they can come to your office and be honest with you, but they won't say out loud in the meeting what they're saying to you in your office, is that really effective? And so that's something I've been focusing on a lot this year in particular, is people who say they have open door policies and don't understand why it's not working in the way that they thought. It's like, really, can we get a little bit more under the surface to figure out what are you really trying to solve for, and figure out that communication barrier, not just saying my door is always open, when in reality it's usually not.
Yeah, the only industry that I know that the door is always open is a real estate agent. That door is literally always open, 24 hours a day. You can reach it. If they are potentially going to make a sale, that real estate agent is taking that call.
And that's something that you know about that industry and you want to do, right? Like, and I think that in the spaces where, for the type of person who wants to be on call and have access in that way, that's great. But also in that industry, the people who are calling real estate agents, there's a transaction and there is money on the other end of that phone call. That's a lot different than sort of, folks on your team coming to ask you questions.
And sometimes weird questions too, because it can get uncomfortable in the workplace. Like, so-and-so is wearing this and I thought we could not wear that, just random little things. And, or there was instances, and I'm not going to name the company, but a coworker of mine, a woman, felt catcalled by another person in this company, and some team members and I got together at lunch, and we were like, we don't like that. Like, that feels weird. Like, especially if you don't have any rapport with that person, and like to catcall is just weird. Now
it takes away your sense of safety.
Yeah,
like, this is a place where I have to feel safe to do my best work, and if I don't feel that way anymore, how can I keep showing up?
Yeah. So we made an email collectively to a particular person, and wasn't much longer that person that catcalled was gone from the company.
Were you in a position of authority when you did that?
Absolutely not.
That's leadership. Like that is someone expressed with you the situation that happened, and you didn't sort of wait for management. Peers got together and responded. And I think that I wanted to point that out because there's always small opportunities for us to practice leadership that we sometimes don't even realize in front of us, that the self-authorization is within, like even empowerment, where we're talking about that word, is that like it's got to come from within.
Yeah. No, I could talk about stuff all day, because I feel like I never looked at myself as a leader. Maybe I'm doing leader type stuff. I don't know. But I look at myself as someone who just wants to do their own thing and do some really cool stuff, whether that be, maybe it's siloed or whatnot. But yeah, I always love talking about community and engagement, and whether that be leadership or entrepreneurial based type stuff. It's always a fun conversation, because I have my own instances, and especially obviously I disclose something that I only tell usually privately, but I definitely put it out there today.
It's interesting to hear you reflect, and I feel grateful for that disclosure of sort of not always feeling like a leader, because I think of all the numbers that you just talked about of like folks, you're mobilizing those people, right? That sort of what's new in Lafayette, what's closing in Lafayette, and I remember this was years ago, some restaurant, I was trying to figure out if it was opened or closed, and I didn't even go to their website. I had like went to your page to show like that is leadership. And the idea is that like you are mobilizing people towards something, and that's either more engagement in Lafayette. Maybe it's putting the spotlight on one particular organization, or one restaurant. That is mobilizing people towards something.
Okay. Well, that's so weird to think about too. Like, I really do forget just how far the reach that sometimes I have, and that's a scary thing.
It is. I had a client who had built a $1 million startup, and I think she'd gotten to that in like 5 years locally, which is that's huge. That's fast, right? And we were having a conversation, and she kind of said like, "Yeah, I founded a $1 million company." I was like, "What?" Like, say it louder. Own it. Like, you founded $1 million company. I think for a lot of us, we have these like mental blocks of like, that's leadership, but not what I'm doing, not me. Like, I didn't have that power. And I think that when we do that, we sort of let our power seep out and we let other people sort of have it. And like, that's something I'm passionate about, is knowing the power that we do have, that we can lean on. And you said this way earlier, getting out of our own way.
Okay. Well, look, we are at an hour and 15 minutes, and that hour flew by pretty quick. So I don't want to keep you too much longer, because I know Lafayette closes at 12 and traffic gets wild on Friday. So with that, is there anything that you wanted to maybe touch on that you didn't have an opportunity to touch on yet?
I'll do a shameless plug, because I have a workshop coming up on Thursday, January 29th. It's a new workshop that I do called When Everyone Leads. It's had a lot of evolutions and iterations to get where it is now. And part of it really was influenced by the time I spent building civic leaders and thinking, we do a really good job in Lafayette explaining to people how the current system functions. And in that process, we're saying a lot of the things that are broken with it, but we never really talk about, okay, well then how do we fix the current system? How do we mobilize people? And so I guess my underlying thesis of that workshop is that everyone can lead. Acadiana needs everyone leading in their own way. And I have to do a lot of work sometimes convincing people that they should be in that room because they don't think that they're a leader yet, or they don't know if they have aspirations. And I'll tell them, if it's your family, if it's your kid's school, if it's your church, if it's at work, even if you have no position of authority, but you're the coworker everyone trusts and comes to, you have a lot of influence. Like, everyone has the capacity to mobilize and lead. And so I love doing that workshop because we talk about conflict, we talk about risk, we talk about heat, we talk about how to ask questions in a way that sort of keeps things moving. And usually people leave surprised that it's different than the other types of maybe workshops they've done before. So yeah, if I have the opportunity, I'll plug it. That's on January 29th, and registration is on my website.
All right. And your website, I do have in the comments section or the caption, it's ashleymud.com, which kudos to that cool domain, because I was trying, excuse me, I was trying to find you on social media. Of course, Facebook, no luck. I think I might have found like posts or articles that had your picture on it. But Instagram, I typed in Ashley Mudd, and there was like 2 or 3 different Ashley Mudds on there with the exact same spelling. And what's crazy is I know that you're a gay person, and the other Ashley Mudd had the rainbow flag, and I'm like, which one is it? So I was clicking all of them. It's like,
you're like, which one is it?
Like, yeah. And then I knew your face. I was like, okay, I think this one's it. But I think you had you and your wife's picture in the profile picture on Instagram.
Maybe. It might be my dog.
Oh, it might be.
I'm obsessed with my dog. So honestly, most of Instagram is them.
Yeah. So I looked, I was like, okay. I scroll, I was like, oh, that's her. It's your smile. I recognize it from your other pictures, because I tried to get you onto the podcast a while back.
I think that I think it was like over 5 years. I think it was when I was at the Leadership Institute, we had first talked about it, and I had done like a brief like podcast tour knowing I was about to leave. Like, I had been offered a new job, and I felt so weird about it. And I was like, I don't want to do too much more, knowing that like I won't be the face of this organization anymore. So I'm excited, because honestly, what I think about leadership has evolved so much in the past 5 years.
Yeah.
I almost probably would have looked back on that and been like cringing. Like, oh, I don't know if like I agree with that anymore. Okay.
Well, I'm glad this worked out, because when you reached back out, I'm like, hold up. It's been a while.
Yep.
But obviously things have changed. There's some different things that you're focused on. So it's like, cool. Yeah, let's get you on figure this out.
Yeah, excited to have spent the morning here. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to have had you. And hopefully the episode is still good on Facebook. It was showing that some data was not transferring, but on the other pages, so it's going on 3 different locations.
Okay.
2 Facebook pages, Developing Lafayette and the T Podcast, and then YouTube, the T Podcast. So it's all there. And if it's not on Facebook or if it's giving weird vibes, I'm going to re-upload it. But either way, great episode. It was a pleasure to have met you for the first time and to talk with you. And hopefully we'll see more of each other at a later date, because I think what you're doing is going to be something that probably has our paths crossed again, I'm sure.
Yeah. I look forward to it.
All right. Well, with that, have a great weekend, and I enjoyed it.
Thanks. You too.
All right, guys, that is it. I hope you have a great weekend, and we'll see you in the next one.